Good morning and welcome everyone to the last day of this fall's NNP Symposium. We are kicking off the day with Amol A. Warrick. Amol, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and turn on your camera whenever you're ready. So we'll be hearing about King Edward VII 1 rupee coins. Amol is based in Bangalore, India, and has been collecting British Indian and Republic Indian coins for over 40 years. And he's particularly interested in the anomalies observed in circulated British India coins. So that's about it for me. Reminder for everyone that you may be tired of hearing by this point. We will be doing a Q&A at the end. You can send in questions for that at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll talk about them at the end of the presentation. All of them will be read anonymously, so no need to worry about that. And that's all I've got. I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Liana, and very kind of you for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to everyone who is attending. I think some of you who may have or may are all collecting British India coinage, you might find this interesting. For those who are not, perhaps this presentation will help motivate you to start a collection on British India coins. So many of you may not be aware, but India was a British colony for more than 2 centuries. And in fact, domination, which was used for currency circulation. So we're going to talk about currency coins. We're not going to refer to pattern or proof coins. The other thing that we need to consider is that this was a very short period as part of British India, and I'll go through the lineage of the history of British India coinage for us to understand. And this is where we've seen a lot of anomalies within this short period of time where King Edward coins were issued. And King Edward was the monarch, the British monarch at that point of time. And we'll also look at some of the subtle differences that are there in these unique varieties of 1 rupee coins. So if you look at the chronology of how the British India coinage evolved, there was a gentleman by the name James Prinsep, and he was the assistant assay master in one of the cities in India, and around 1800 he started researching Indian architecture and Indian coinage, weights and measures. And around 1820 he sort of came up to the conclusion that there were about 700 varieties of 1 rupee coins with different symbols, effigies, and all kinds of varieties that were floating around in the market. British India, in fact, the East India Company, which was the governing India at that point of time, had 3 presidencies: the India, the Bengal, and the Madras presidencies. So they were also issuing their own coins. And he felt that it was important for us, for the country, to standardize its currency. And he went up to the Governor General at that point of time, William Bentinck, and he suggested that it's important for us, for India, to sort of standardize its currency. And he gave the go-ahead, and that's how in 1835 the first coins were minted which were part of the British India uniform coinage. And that's how the term uniform coinage was launched. The first coins were, of course, had the effigy of King William IV, who was the king at that point of time, the British monarch. And then when he passed away, Queen Victoria took over. So in 1840, we had Queen Victoria coins issued. And then, of course, there was a design change in 1862, and where she was shown as the crowned queen. And in 1877, when she became empress, the coins were issued with Victoria Empress as the effigy on the obverse. And then, of course, we had the King Edward coins, who became the monarch in 1902 after Victoria passed away. And then subsequently, we had King George V, Edward VIII, who abdicated the throne after King George V, and King George VI took over, but there were no coins issued in with King Edward VIII. And of course, when India achieved independence, the switch happened to minting Republic of India coins. So that's the chronology of events. From 1903 to 1910, when the coins were issued, we are looking at 7-year period out of the 112 years of British India coinage. A very short period, but clearly a very distinct period in Indian coinage history. And we'll talk about it a little bit, about why it was unique from the numismatic point of view. A little bit of background and history about King Edward. A lot of it, a lot has been written about him. But I think we need to recognize the fact that, what was his impact on the numismatic history of India. I think because of the fact that he was the first male child, he became the automatic heir to the throne. But given the fact that he was going to be the heir to the throne, there was a lot of expectations from his parents, Victoria and Prince Albert, and he was loaded with a lot of stuff to study: English, geography, mathematics, economics, which is what was not of interest to him. But on the contrary, because he was a more sociable person, he was good at making relationships. And because of Prince Albert passing away early in Victoria's life, she had become an introvert, and she had stopped all social engagements. King Edward filled that gap very well, and he was good at building diplomatic relationships. He made a lot of trips fronting the monarchy on behalf of the monarchy, and he was quite popular during his visits to the US, North America. And he also visited India as well. He was the king in waiting for more than 60 years, so he had to wait till his mother passed away, and that record was then later on broken by King Charles. And finally, he ascended the throne on 9th August 1902. And he took his job very, very seriously. And the frosty relationships that were there with France and Russia. He sort of tried to bridge the gap which existed because of all the political differences that were coming up at that point of time. Europe was really heating up from a political point of view. And because, all the royals were interconnected, he sort of became the uncle of Europe. And, he passed away, unfortunately, in 1910 when, his currency that was issued was then moved to George V, who took over the throne. So what's unique about King Edward coins? I think the first and foremost important thing that happened during that point of time was the enactment of the India Coinage Act of 1906, and King Edward gave its formal approval. And in fact, at that point of time, there were three mints that were producing coins, as I mentioned earlier: the Madras Mint, the Bombay Mint, and the Bengal Mint. And in fact, the Madras Mint had been shut, and in fact, its operations and materials had been sold off to the Nizam of Hyderabad. So there were really two mints that the government was dependent on for coin production. Those were Bombay and Bengal. And that was something that was formalized by this act. There are fresh designs that were introduced after more than 40 years. And as and when there are new designs that were introduced, you always have challenges in mass production. And some of the varieties that you will observe during this course of this presentation is, I think, because of those challenges that were there. Copper was becoming expensive, and while the various mints that were in production previously as part of the previous century had been experimenting with bronze, a formal decision was taken to start production of the lower denominations of coins. So you had the half rupee and the quarter rupee and the 2 annas, which were still produced in silver, but those which were the annas that's where bronze was introduced. And that happened in 1996. As I mentioned, King Edward had a big influence, and this is where he really influenced the introduction of languages. In fact, there were 3 languages that were introduced. Persian is a script, and Persian had a big association with India, starting from the early 10th century, 11th century, when it was introduced here. So it was reintroduced in a coinage, starting with the 1 anna production, which was in copper nickel, and which had a scallop design. And we'll talk a little bit about it as well, what was the difference between this 1 anna coin and the rest of the coins that were minted. With regards to the 1 rupee coins, I think they were standard with regards to what was followed previously, round in design, very similar in weight and in circumference. And they were only produced in the 2 mints, Bombay and Kolkata. And incidentally, after a long time, we had a monarch without a crown on the obverse. So the last time that this happened was when King William IV whose effigy was produced, was without the crown. But this was another yet instance where King Edward had his effigy without the crown. So let's look at the obverse of the coin. And if you compare this obverse with some of the previous versions, obviously the image, as I mentioned, was without the crown, but the profile of the effigy was very, very classy. And of course, the previous versions that were produced, some of the proof coins had a slightly bigger relief of the effigy, which was toned down a little bit, just to ensure that the effigy was not damaged during circulation. But the image was created in such a way that it showed him with his full features, and of course his beard, which was a straight mark, featured very prominently. the image of the designer and the engraver, his initials appear on the half rupee and the quarter rupee, as well as in the lower denominations near the neck of King Edward. But it does not appear in the 1 rupee. As per the standard practice, which is followed by the Royal Mint, his image faced the right. Queen Victoria's image always faced the left. King William was on the right, and the subsequent effigies which were minted for George V and George VI had their images on the left as well. There weren't too many changes done with the milled, slightly rounded tooth comb design as compared to the previous design of Queen Victoria, of Victoria Empress, which was slightly pointed. But as I mentioned, the circumference, the weight, the thickness, which is slightly higher than what was produced for Queen Victoria coins, was slightly higher. But by and large, the obverse was retained as it is. And of course, it's difficult to get good quality, good graded Edward coins in the market, especially circulated ones. I mean, if you get an MS64 or an MS65, you will be lucky. Let's look at the reverse, and this is where I can say with conviction that Edward's influence sort of came here. So the biggest change that you observe in these coins, in this design, is the fact that they use lotus very prominently and very boldly across both the sides, left and the right. Now, in Hindu and in Buddhist mythology, lotus is considered very, very symbolic, very, very revered, because it signifies purity, it signifies resilience. Every night, every evening, the lotus flower goes into the water, into the mud, and every morning it blooms up. Only speculating that, perhaps they use lotus to signify this. It's not documented anywhere, but I'm presuming that it could be the logical reason why lotus was there. And the number of flowers and buds were 12, again, on each side, again, speculating, because from a cosmic point of view, both in Christian and Hindu mythology, 12 is again a revered number. Now, because Edward was shown without the crown, as a mark of respect, a crown was placed on the reverse. Now, there are a couple of theories which have been circulating, and those of which have been documented by Fred Predmore, who wrote the Bible on Indian numismatics, especially British India coinage, where he has said that there was a lot of one theory states that there was a lot of back and forth between the Royal Mint, which is based in Bombay, which is based in London, and the Mint Office, the India Mint Office, which is based as to what crown to use and how the design should evolve on the coin, on the obverse. And because of this back and forth, the Governor General at that point of time, Lord Curzon, was pretty influential and was also very ambitious, pushed his way through and said that, let's put this design across, and sort of was signed the Tudor crown, which is now shown on the back on the reverse. So you have the Tudor crown, which is here, whose image was used on the reverse as a mark of respect to show that this is indeed the king who is whose coins are being issued. And of course, there was the mint mark, which was used. B was infused, B for Bombay, and some somewhere where some marks which show as being relief, and we look at those images as well. But the real identification of a coin which is minted in Bombay was this mint mark, which is here. Here, which you see here, which was used to identify coins which were minted in Bombay. And those that did not have a mint mark were obviously ones which were minted in Kolkata. Of course, there are also coins which have got a mint mark here and which are associated with the Kolkata mint. But there is no documentary evidence of these coins having been minted in Kolkata, but collectors do sort of point out that because the mint mark is not here, it obviously means that, and if it is here on the left, it is minted in Kolkata. Of course, that is again very subjective, but it is there are coins which have been minted with these mint marks here. So we spoke about the crown, and so that's the image of the Tudor crown, which appears on the back of the coin on the reverse. Of course, there were the imperial state crown and the St. Edward crowns as well. Why they were not, why those images were not used is again very, very speculative. There is nothing documented. But surprisingly, the coins which were issued for King Edward for the straight settlements had his effigy with the Tudor crown. And why they were not used here is still a mystery. I also spoke about the fact that there were these 1 anna coins which were issued starting from 1906 when the 1 anna coin was released. That had Edward in his ceremonial robes with a crown on his head on the obverse, and that had a Tudor crown. So that was the change that was brought about. And somewhere around 1910, when one of the last years of Edward's coins, which were minted, they were even contemplating, the mints were even contemplating to introduce new designs into the country. So let's look at some of the differences, and this is really interesting. And I spoke about the fact that you had the mint marks, which were the differentiator between Bombay and Kolkata. But this was also the first time where the Persian script was used after some time, after the King William 4 coins were released in 1835. So Persian script had a long history. So I think this was a big step to introduce Persian in the script as 1 rupee. One of the reasons why there is these dots which appear and you have the B infused and the B in relief is the fact that there were a lot of issues with regards to counterfeit coins, and there are also some notes made by Fred Predmore saying that there was a factory in China which was producing counterfeit coins and moving them to India, and it's mentioned there. So perhaps the decision to introduce these dots, the B marks, was to make life a little more difficult for all the counterfeiters which are producing coins. I hope you can see this image clearly, but this is where you see the B raised and the B infused on the right. Again, there is a lot of inconsistency with regards to the B marks. Some coins do have them, although they are produced in the Bombay Mint. But the inconsistency is very, very startlingly observed. So, this is one way that the Mint tried to introduce making life difficult for the counterfeiters. But I think in a way it was a great step to make sure that people were able to identify the B marks and recognize that it was indeed produced by the Bombay Mint. This is a very interesting die variety, which I came across during my study. The fact that after so many years, the Persian script had been reintroduced, approximately 40 years, more than 40 years, and so there was always this confusion of how many dots needed to be there. And the initial confusion was whether it should be 3, 4, 5, or 6. 5 is the standard. But there were some varieties of coins which were minted with 3 dots, some with 4, and some with 6. But as you look at coins which were produced in 1904, 1905, and the following years, this variety of dots is not observed. 1907, I think, is an exception. But I think because of the overuse of the dyes, sometimes the dots, sometimes they just moved on and got fixed later on the other coins, confusion about 3, 4, and 6. But by and large, this was standardized as we go along the coins, along the coinage in the following years. There is one variety which is also observed, which is on the dot below Ru, which is on the far right of this screen, which again perhaps is attributed to the fact that there could be some flecks of silver which could have moved out of the die and got fixed to the coin while production. In his book, Paul Stevens and Grant Warrick have sort of given a reference to why these errors could have happened, and that's pretty useful, and it's being documented as well. Die rotations, I thought, given the fact that this is observed in some of the Victoria coins as well, and perhaps the mints by that time, at the start of the 20th century, would have been able to fix it. But this is clearly observed in the earlier coins of 1903 and 1904, in which the crown faces at 9 o'clock, which is on the reverse, and that's how we call it as a 9 o'clock die rotation, which is quite rare. But there are some where the crown faces 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock, which is also pretty common in the coins which were issued in 1903 and 1904, primarily in the Bombay Mint. This is an illustration of a coin which is minted in the Bombay Mint. I've not come across coins at 6 o'clock with a 6 o'clock die rotation on the reverse, but I think they should be there in the market, but I have not come across them. Hopefully, if I get one, I'm sure I'll acquire that. But this is a very different kind of variety, which is quite consistent across British India coinage. You see that in George V and George VI coins as well. The number 4. So, in the year 1904, you had coins which were issued with last 4 as a digit, where you see this length here of the stroke, which is of 4 in short, which is short in this image, and which is long in this image. Again, minted in the Bombay Mint. And this could be assigned due to the fact that perhaps there are different dyes which were being used and which resulted in this difference in the number 4. But this is a very different kind of variety which you will come across, which I've come across in the British India coinage. I've not seen that in either of the Queen Victoria coins, as well as in the later years after King Edward. So a very unique variety here. This is another interesting one where you had this digits which are slightly different. So the digit 5, again, which is minted in Bombay Mint, slightly stocky and short, which is here. And then you have the long 5, which is appearing here. Again, this could be a die variety, although it is part of various catalogs, but how it came about getting minted is very difficult to speculate. You have the thick 7 here. Of course, this image is slightly blurred or pixelated, but the 07 image, which is thin, which is quite clear here, and very difficult to reason why these coins got minted. Whether is it because of the dye, or is it because of the mass production of the coins, which resulted in the slight movement of the die while hitting the metal. This is again an interesting variety where the last digits have been scrubbed and have been overwritten. I have just 2 images here, but there are also images which are where 5 has been overwritten by 6. There is 9 which has been overwritten by 10. Also, which have been catalogued and documented. Obviously, because of the fact that there were reasons that the years needed to be changed. The numbers were changed. But when you look at them with a magnifying glass, you can clearly see the scrubbing, which is very evident on the coin. Of course, it also meant that the dyes which were being used were really old, and in fact, it was the fact that they could be easily scrubbed. Weak dyes which were enabling the engravers to write back the number. As we come to the end of the series of King Edward 1909 and 1910, this is a variety which I came across especially in 1909 and 10. And these were coins which were minted in the Bombay Mint, where because of the mismatch in the alignment, there are blurred imprints of king and emperor. So this is only on the one side of the coin. The other side remains correctly written. But this is this clearly indicated that the dies were worn out, and the mint was in fact looking actively to refresh the dies and introduce new designs. But this is one variety which does come across, although I've not seen it in large numbers, but there are these ones which are there, which were in circulation. The last one, which is part of the last year of Edward's coins in the year 1909. Again, there is an alignment issue between 1 and 0, and it is quite apparent between the less space between the numerals 1 and 0 on the left and the 1 on the right. So clearly this was observed in both the Bombay and Kolkata mints, where these varieties were produced. And clearly, it was, suboptimal embossing and misstriking, which was causing these varieties. So, in summary, I think clearly, these varieties and differences really give us an indication of the kind of minting practices that were prevalent at that point of time. Both the mints, although they were producing large number of coins. In fact, between the year 1903 and 1910, the 1 rupee coins that were minted were about 930 million, which is a humongous number of coins that were minted. I can only speculate something similar could be observed in the half rupee or in the quarter rupee coins or in the lower denominations, but it is worthwhile to research. A lot of these coins are available today in the market simply because most of the coins were hoarded because of their because they were 1 rupee coins. The others, because they were constantly traded, were either lost in circulation or were melted by dwellers, and therefore, very few of those varieties, if at all they do exist, are available. Also, quality, which was important to be tracked, really, was a differentiator here. Perhaps if quality had been good, these coins would not have appeared in the market. But I think the pressure of producing large number of coins because there was a demand for coins was felt, and therefore they slipped through quality as well. And the last point is, even small changes, with master dies, especially when you are releasing a new product, and especially since we're talking about more than a century ago, where practices were still primitive, can definitely impact production till the time both the engravers and the die makers are comfortable minting those coins. The first three books I would recommend are really the crux of this presentation. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Fred Credmore has, has had access to documents because he was based in London, and he had access to the India office documents, which was also in London, and based on which he has written some very nice theses and theories about why some coins were minted and how they were produced. 2 and 3, of course, have been written by Indian authors, but they sort of established some of the practices which were followed in the India mints, and they're especially very informative. Dr. K.M. Sharif has written extensively on Queen Victoria coins as well. 4 and 5 are great standard catalogs. So if you're looking at starting a collection, I think these books are should be your first reference point for starting a collection, and also looking at what you have in your collection as well. 6, 7, 8, 9 have been great friends and also responsible for helping build my collection, which I've shared with you. Leona mentioned about the fact that I live in Bangalore, and this is Edward's marble statue, which is based in Bangalore. It was installed in 1919. So wherever you visit Bangalore, it's installed at Carbon Park. To take some time out to see this marvelous sculpture. It's a great piece of art, and it's been taken care of by the government. That's it. Thank you very much for your time.
All righty. So then we are going to do the Q&A portion. So I'll have you go ahead and stop your screen share. There should be a red button at the top that says stop share. And then for everyone watching, you can go ahead and send in questions to the Q&A. There are a couple already in here, so we're going to start off with those. And if anyone has any others, go ahead and send them. To start off, where's the best place to buy these coins?
Okay, great question. I'm presuming that you're starting a collection on British India. eBay is one of the sources that you can look at, but eBay can also be a source where you can get potentially counterfeit coins as well. So unless you are not an expert, I would suggest that you go to eBay. But otherwise, there are some great auction houses that are there. Spink is one in UK, and Heritage Auctions. They sell some great products. Also, by and large, because the market is evolving, you will observe coins which have been graded. So it's always good to get a graded coin if you're starting a collection. Any NGC or PCGS grade is great to pick up. And mind you, it's a great investment as well, because it's got about 92% silver. So, and silver, as you know, is appreciating in the world market. But that apart, I've always looked at it as a collection, as a collector. You really need to be passionate about this, because if you dive into building a British India collection, there are so many years that you need to consider, spread across 112 years. Coming back to your question, auction houses are great places to start off with.
All right. How difficult is it to put together a complete set of Edward VII 1 rupee coins?
Well, I mean, it's not very difficult. I mean, if you see the Edward VII coins, I mean, if you look at 1 rupee coins, there are plenty of them available in the market, and especially in India. And I think they are available elsewhere in the world as well. I see quite a few of them on eBay. And because you're looking at only a 7-year period, it's very easy to acquire. I think it's the varieties that I just talked about, which is a challenge. Because those don't come into the market, and if they come, they are auctioned at very high prices in the auctions.
Okay, then we have one more question in here. If nothing else comes in, we'll wrap it up after this one. So anyone watching, this is your last call. Otherwise, we have a more general question. How large is the coin collecting community in India? Are there many clubs and coin shows? Yes,
in fact, I mean, it's become a big market now because I think instead of collecting, it has become more of a trading community. So there are more traders than collectors. So it's pretty evolved, and it's evolving even faster. And now with NGC and PCGS also, starting their service here. Of course, there was some issues because of COVID and the pandemic, but I think it's pretty evolved here. There are coin shows practically every week in different cities, and there are some national exhibitions that are conducted in Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, elsewhere, and there are various coin clubs as well in each city. So they meet pretty frequently. Regularly to have discussions, presentations.
Very cool. Okay, then I think that's going to wrap us up. Thank you so much for taking the time out to present with us. I know it's pretty late where you are, so thank you for working with our schedule to make it happen.
Thanks. My pleasure. And I really appreciate the work that the NNP is doing, because putting together something like this is always challenging, and especially with the logistics and getting it right, because we're dealing with technology. It can just go belly up at any point of time. So thank you very much for putting this effort, and I really appreciate what you're doing for the community, because it's very interesting to speak about coins from different parts of the world. You never get an opportunity do that, especially if you're from a club, then it's a different issue. But otherwise, this is a great initiative, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. For viewers, our next one will be starting at 12:30. We've got Bill Eckberg speaking on the first coin made under the US Constitution. So hope some of you all will tune into that one. Otherwise, that's it for us. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back soon.